So I'm Pete Levine. I'm a advocate for Remote Inclusive. I am also a developer on the Open Source Cloud Foundry Foundation. And so I've been, over the past 2 years, I've been a hiring manager. I've interviewed, I've hired, I've helped grow talented individuals. And then myself, I also swapped jobs. You know, I was I was a candidate myself. And so I just wanted to reflect on some of the findings that I've personally am super passionate about when it comes to hiring and when it comes to DEI First policies. And so when I think about no worries. Sorry about that. My dongle is a little bit sensitive. All right, thank you. So yeah, the reason why I bring up DEI first is whenever there's a groundbreaking either technology or there's something that has a powerful force behind it, we end up integrating it into our policies, right? We end up I'll give an example. Mobile. So we, as a community, we decided to, as mobile came out, we decided to make our products mobile first. And that gave us the capability to not only provide a better user experience to all of our users, but also to, it made developing our products easier. We didn't have to shoehorn in the mobile experience after creating our products. And so I feel the exact same way about DEI First. So our DEI policies, our policies for hiring should really be DEI First. And yeah, I still don't have slides. My apologies. Hey, let's go. All right. All right, so I wanted to talk about a hiring manager. I want to tell a story about a hiring manager who recently made a post on LinkedIn, and they were hiring, they wanted to celebrate that they hired someone for a position that they were hiring for. And so apparently they had a lot of individuals that applied to the position, and they asked a myriad of questions, and they came up with, as a hiring manager, they came up with their own list of do's and don'ts for potential candidates in the future. And these sets of questions are what they would like the candidate to ask and not ask. And a few that were very, that stood out to me, that really shows what kind of culture they promote, were don't ask about education. So don't ask about the budget for things like attending conferences, right? Things like online courses. Don't ask about continued education or higher education. And then secondly, they asked not to talk about time off or benefits in particular, because these could be asked about when you talk to a recruiter, or it's a policy for HR. However, this paints a little bit of a picture to their culture, in my opinion. And the questions that they suggest that you ask are more towards career growth, career development. While they're open-ended questions, they feel more like you have a hustle culture. So so they they ask you to, as an interviewee, as a candidate, to ask, what can I do in my role? Or is there any career growth? How can I help? Those kinds of questions. And as we discovered with work reform over the past 2 years, really, not all of us desire to climb the career ladder. There are many very talented individuals that want to stay where they are. They don't need to grow, or they're just starting their career and they don't need to really think about immediately their career growth. And so, I just wanted to kind of paint this picture. This is going to be kind of what we reflect upon throughout the rest of the talk. And so you might be asking, where do I start? And so what we need to do as leaders in this industry is we need to really evaluate the landscape. The landscape has changed quite a bit over the past 2 years, for real. And so what does the landscape look like right now? To me, it looks like we have especially with quiet quitting and the Great Resignation, we have a talent workforce that really values work-life balance, and they value the individual, how you're treated in an organization, right? So really, that's kind of where we need to start and not just evaluate once, but continuous evaluation. Iterate on that evaluation, because things change, and especially right now, things are changing in a rapid pace, especially when it comes to legislation, right? We have Oregon, where you can no longer ask a candidate's pay, for example, which is awesome. And so, secondly, policies that retain existing underrepresented talent. How can we hire and promote, underrepresented talent when we're not retaining them to begin with, right? So we need to take a step back, reflect. Maybe we need to identify flight risks in our organization. Why are they flight risks? What's wrong with our culture? So there's a lot of reflection that we need to do as leaders in this community. Next is buy-in from leadership in HR. So HR and your, especially upper management, they're evaluated on some of these metrics on their DEI policies. A lot of organizations have DEI standards that they need to live up to. And so by establishing buy-in with these individuals, they're probably going to become your biggest ally, at least at first. They will be your cheerleaders. So establish buy-in with these individuals. And last, communicate and provide guidelines. So as a leader in an organization, we can only do so much being an advocate. Definitely communicate, establish guidelines, establish these best practices so that we can, we make sure that the whole organization-wide, that we celebrate our policies and these reflections that we've made. Especially as we reflect back on that story I said about that hiring manager, they might not have, mentioned some of the questions not to ask if they had these guidelines in place. So if there's one thing I want you all to take away for today, it's this particular metric, which is over a third of individuals will avoid applying to your position if they perceive a lack of inclusion. And so I personally would be a part of that 39% for that particular team. So if that team was hiring in that post, I would avoid it for sure. Because I perceive a lack of inclusion by having those lists of don't asks. So next is better hiring practices. So reduce the bias. So there's a lot of talks on bias alone, and I'll just give a quick example of some that are interesting to me and that affect our that affect how we include candidates in our organizations. So things like, where did they work previously? Which school did they go to? We have these kind of just-in-time evaluations that we have, these mental models that we develop, where we're like, oh, this person's an ex-Googler, so they're gonna fit right in, stuff like that. So we have inherent biases. There's a lot we can discuss for biases alone. That can be its own talk. But for biases, let's start a conversation with our current talent. So evaluate with your team and maybe the hiring pool or your staff on their biases, and have an open and honest discussion about that. Start that discussion as early as possible, and have that kind of drive some of your interview processes going forward. And last is promote confidence in candidates. And so one thing that I noticed as I was hiring for my company is a lack of confidence from maybe underrepresented communities. And so how do we as leaders provide that confidence? Where can we provide that confidence? I have a few suggestions. One suggestion that I personally have is include candidates in the interview process. Provide them with options so that they feel like they have they feel like they have a little bit of ownership and they're included. So this ties in well with this next metric. So at Hewlett-Packard, women wouldn't apply to a promotion if they saw a checklist and didn't check off 100% of those items. And so we're missing half of our workforce in promotions, in possible promotions. And so with this, let's provide confidence. And so this ties directly into better job descriptions. So avoid those checklists. What we could provide instead, potentially, are expectations for the role. What do you expect for a role in the first month, the first 3 months, the first 6 months? So provide those expectations for your team. And it also paints a picture of the team that they'll be working for. Oh. All right, thank you. So this is one thing that's super funny to me. I never see a DEI policy or metrics or anything in a job description. Let's get that on the job description. Let's celebrate our passion for our policies and our metrics and where we want to do better. And this will go a long way to alleviating that 39%, right? Pay ranges, I can talk for hours about pay ranges. I personally believe that how can we have equity without establishing transparent compensation? And so I don't think we can. And I think we need, many local governments are starting to require pay ranges, and that's a great start. But compensation is more than pay ranges. And so I think compensation as a whole needs to be evaluated as part of your DEI First policies. And lastly, include your interview process. So when it comes to applying for a job, I know right away, personally, I'll avoid a job if there's a take-home. I don't want to create a project on my own time, for example. And I've spoken to many individuals that feel the same way. So this leads directly into interview better. So we have hiring panels that are consistent across organizations. And you might already have a set of talent that provide these interviews and this panel. And this is where we need to include these policies first. We need to establish guidelines for reviewing resumes. Like I mentioned, we have biases just on name. We have biases just on if there's pictures. Hairstyle has been one that's come up over the past few years. And so we need to establish these guidelines, establish where our biases are, and provide them to all of our hiring pool. One thing that I've thought about recently is providing multiple options for evaluations. So a lot of us, especially in the tech industry, especially open source, we evaluate based on, can you do X and Y? Can you solve this problem? And so what I've discovered in talking with my friends and family is that, not everyone wants to do a whiteboarding interview, for example. But some individuals are really good at that. I have a friend who was a math major and went into development. They were excellent at solving algorithms. And not so well. So maybe provide options. This is something that's that I started doing as a hiring manager. That maybe a take home is better for this particular individual because they have a lot of free time. They're super passionate about the technology, so they just want to write something and show it to you. So provide those options. One thing that's always super interesting to me when I'm interviewing is, all right, I just grilled you for 55 minutes straight. What questions do you have? So how does that, and you have to realize as a leader, you are not only interviewing as your candidates, but they're also interviewing you. So you need to maybe even, so one thing I suggest is have them ask questions first. Maybe get some of that nervous energy out and have them ask what they've been thinking about this whole time, especially in super stressful interviews. And then a new thought that one of my friends at another organization brought up to me is random assignments of the hiring panel. So this ties back to biases. So one organization that I know about at least has been providing random panels. And so those, the individuals that perform the interviews and perform the metrics, they need those guidelines that we established earlier. And by having that random panel, hopefully we eliminate biases. And so we want candidates to succeed, hopefully. As leaders, we want to, we're looked upon to really facilitate and harbor a inclusive and safe environment. No matter what kind of leadership you are, if you're a senior or a tech lead or anything, any sort of leader with experience, we're looked upon to provide this culture. And so what are some of the known predictors of a successful candidate? And this was provided by one of the links I shared before in the metrics, and which is, so work samples. We're in the open source community right now, so our open source contributions, those should speak volumes. Our existing work should speak volumes as opposed to things like trivia questions. Peer and manager reviews. We are, one aspect that I've liked over the past few years that's really come up are peer evaluations, and that's been, in my opinion, wonderful. And we need to continue that. And we need to also look to those peer evaluations, things like the LinkedIn recommendations and stuff like that, as valuable tools to evaluate candidates. And then last, motivation. So, Candidates who, of course, know about the organization that they're applying to or super passionate about it, they are, that should count for something. And so I just wanted to leave you with saying, once again, thank you all. Because of you leaving your jobs over the past 2 years, because of you finding new jobs that treat you better, we've established work reform. And work reform will only continue if we keep it up. And as leaders, we establish these DEI guidelines and foster them. And so thank you so much. And yeah, I'm super optimistic about the future, and I think we can hire better. Thank you.